Okay, so good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rubina, and I'm part of the Social Work Students Careers team in Western Sydney. I'm currently doing my final year of Masters of Social Work qualifying course, and I just have a couple of things to finish up, and I'll be done in a couple of weeks' time. Yes, so I'm
Yay.
very happy about that. Yeah. Okay, so before introducing this session, I would like to acknowledge the country we are learning through and on. Western Sydney University would like to acknowledge the Darug people who are the traditional custodians of the land that the university seeks to thrive along with all others. We acknowledge and pay respects to the elders past, present, and emerging who have given us time, knowledge, and guidance. We appreciate the rich contribution and resilience that the First Nations people offer to Western Sydney University. Up to you, Justine.
Thank you, Rubina. Thank you, everybody. Great to see people coming online. And so my name's Justine O'Sullivan, academic course advisor for social work at Liverpool campus. I myself am on the lands of the Bidjigal and Cabrogal people of the Eora Nation on the eastern shores of Sydney, where it meets the Pacific Ocean. And I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners. Aboriginal land always is and always will be. As people who've come on to the earlier sessions have said, have heard me say, I do believe it's important to identify the learning and connecting that can come only when people are prepared to share their knowledge and listen to each other's learning and each other's experiences, and that idea of yarning, that not to co-opt a concept. And further, that this week is NAIDOC week, and as part of this week's activities, we're really alert to foregrounding experiences of First Nations people on these lands, their role in science, knowledge, sharing, oral history, all the areas that we've become strengthened from by First Nations people's contribution. So today we're presenting our social work educators contribution, which is, I thought I was very groovy by saying a SWED talk. So social work educators talk about research and how you go about identifying a potential research pathway for yourself that might come once you've finished your social work course, your undergraduate social work course. Now, as you probably are aware, these talks only come because people have generously offered their time, and I'd like to introduce several people who have given their time for today, our social work educators. We have Dr. Robert North. We've got Dr. George Turner, and we've also got Dr. Daniel Doe, and each are going to share their journey about practice towards research, towards practice towards further study, towards research, and the many different paths that's taken. So, but firstly, I do need to, because each new one of these events, we might have people who haven't attended past ones, I need to do some of the housework and share with you that firstly, these sessions are recorded. So you should be alert to that. Secondly, we're asking that people put their video on if that's at all possible, but if not possible, can we suggest that you upload a really professional photo of yourself with your name so that you can be well represented in these sessions. And each session you attend, you should put your name and student ID number, student ID number in the chat zone.
You're muted, Justine.
Justine, you're muted.
Yeah, unmute, thanks. Thanks everyone. If you could put your student ID and your name into the chat, and then we can provide you with a certificate of attendance for this session. And further, that there's 2 lucky Zoom prizes, of $40 cash vouchers for people who attend sessions. There'll be a raffle where there'll be an opportunity for your name to be drawn out, but only if you put it in the chat zone, in the chat feature. And we ask people to mute microphone while presenting. So today we're going to start with, I just want to say, the fabulous Dr. Robin North, if I can put it over to you, Robin.
Thank you, Justine. It's fabulous to see students putting their names and IDs in the chat, and I recognise so many of you, so fantastic. I'm going to talk today, followed by George and Daniel. I want to talk about what brought me to social work, so go right back to the beginning, what made me want to do some further study, and where my research interests lie. And I guess starting at the beginning, I came to social work as a mature age student. I'd worked for a number of years as an admin or a clerical officer, as we used to call them then, in various policy areas of government. Just going back another step, when I was about 12, my best friend at high school, her sister was becoming a social work. She was studying social work. And I didn't really know what social work was then. But I knew that even at that young age that I had a belief in social justice and the flip side of that, social injustice. We know that, you know, there are going to be winners and losers in society, the way society is structured. And, you know, who is the voice for people that are marginalised from society? We all come to social work for different reasons, but I think in our social work team, that's something that's fairly unanimous, that belief in social justice, or more so social injustice. I started studying whilst I was working part-time as a clerical officer. I passed with quite good marks in my bachelor. I got a scholarship to go on and do a PhD, which is the research content of what we're talking about today. Back in those days, because I did honours and got first class honours, I didn't do a Masters of Research. I went straight to a PhD. Universities change their curriculum all the time. And across Australia now, the trend is that you do a Master of Research before the PhD. And Daniel will obviously be talking about that a bit more. What would I tell my younger self? I've just written down if I was going to think about doing some further study. What would I think about now? I can remember during the depths of my PhD, a former colleague who's now deceased said to me, you'll always think of your PhD days when you're doing further research, as you won't think it at the time, but there will be a huge amount of intellectual freedom that you can explore so many areas of research. That's the thing about being a PhD student or an MRes student, Master of Research. You've got to then start zooming that topic down into something that is doable. I guess in terms of the actual discipline of social work, touching on those inequalities that we are aware of in society, before embarking on further study, I think it's always good to have an awareness or a self-awareness. Social work, as you know, is not just about helping people, it's about making change that can influence further change. And for that matter, I'm a unit coordinator for field education and social policy. And a lot of students think, oh, I didn't join social work to think about social policy. Well, I'd suggest to you that having a socio-political awareness is absolutely essential in social work. And let's face it, we've all been bombarded in recent days by the US election. What's that got to do with us? Well, at the very highest levels, it's got a lot to do with us, because those decisions made right up the top there, internationally and nationally, flow down to us at the local level. I'd also like to comment that Western Sydney is so ideally located in an area of Australia that's one of the fastest growing areas of Australia. And for me, you know, social work isn't just about helping those people. It's about already recognising that in areas of high urban growth, attached to that, unfortunately, may come high urban or social problems. And as social workers, our research is really what we call applied research. We could sit there and theorise until the cows come home. But how do you apply that in practice? It's about what we learn from our research and how we can make a difference in our communities. And that's certainly an aim of the university in terms of reaching out to communities, ensuring that our graduates, that there are employment opportunities for them, whether that be in a range of government or non-government organisations. We are ideally placed in our university. We have so many students that may be first in family to go to university. And I was one of those students way back in the day. I did my undergraduate in another state, but what that meant was social work is recognised in various countries around Australia. So I was able to go and work in the UK for a number of years. We've had a number of graduates go and work in the UK where social work is a much more defined profession. It's a registered profession. So I think Canada's another a country where you can take your social work degree. George is nodding and you'll understand why when he starts speaking. He's from that part of the world. So the bachelor or the master's of social work opens up a whole world of opportunity, of career opportunities. In terms of my own practice, and everyone on the social work team has worked in practice. We're not just academics teaching from our castles in the sky. We have had on the ground experience, my own experience, apart from policy work, which I did go into upon graduation. I worked for a number of years in women's health, a health centre in Adelaide, which is where I came from. And that opportunity opened me up to a whole network of field contacts. You might think Sydney is a huge city, of course it is, but the social work field, we have lots of connections all through Sydney, particularly Western Sydney. And in that respect, social work is a kind of a small microcosm of this huge population in Western Sydney. And our team has great links, ideas for research. And of course, field education, because I'm a field education unit coordinator, is absolutely central to that, because in social work, in the undergraduate degree, as you know, there's 1,000 hours of placement, the same in the master's degree. So there is lots of opportunity to develop networks through your placements, and many of our students do pick up employment. That's great once you've got your degree, but why would you do research? And I hope today that I've kind of made it clear that research isn't this theoretical stuff in the sky. It's about applying our research and contributing to our communities and to you as students. I think that I'll leave it there and pass on to George, if that's okay. Thank you very much. And one thing I was very remiss of me not to do at the start of my presentation was to acknowledge the lands, the traditional Indigenous lands that I'm coming from today, which are the lands of the Wongal people, part of the Eora Nation, around the areas of Five Dock and Iron Cove Bay. So thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you on campus when we eventually get back.
Yes. Thank you, Robin. That's fantastic. One of the questions that's come through, and you might be a good person to ask, involvement with an international federation of social workers. It doesn't have to be specifically that international federation itself, but international community of social workers. Do you have anything to share with the group about what relevance, how you found that relevant to your development?
I talked about when I was doing my PhD, like many of us do and continue to do, we go to many conferences. Once upon a time, it would be in all parts of the world, but that's obviously restricted in person for now. And again, you find that social work community internationally, it's actually a lot tighter than what you think. So going to conferences, reporting on your research, develops those kind of networks in addition to the International Federation, which Justine spoke about. Once you qualify, you're eligible for the Australian Association of Social Workers, and that in turn makes you eligible for undertaking social work in other countries, as well as research in other countries, which is separate to the membership. But that's the opportunity social work provides you, meeting with colleagues from all around the world and developing collaborative research practices. So even beyond Western Sydney, reaching out globally, I think that's so important. I hope that's answered your question. Yeah.
That's right. And also, just so you know, the International Federation of Social Workers is, they've got locations across the world, obviously. But for example, there's one, we did find one location that they didn't have, which was in Bangladesh. There's not an officer that relates to the International Federation there, but they have a way of trying to understand what's going on across the whole world. They've got territories identified, regions that are identified, and I think we are in the Asian Pacific region of the International Federation of Social Workers. So if you ever want to explore, they have laboratory, they have strategies to try and build relationships. Anybody who graduates with a social work degree is welcome to reach out and contact that organisation and try and build connections in other countries that you might be interested in, or on topics. Like they've got a current topic about the sustainability goals of the United Nations at the moment, trying to promote that all social workers should be trying to bring those sustainability goals alive in their everyday practice. So the International Federation does some work on that. So it's a really great connection to build on, and everybody's welcome to do it. Okay, so George, ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready to rock and roll. Thank you so much for having me, Justine. I want to acknowledge that I'm on the Aboriginal lands of Sydney, Redfern to be exact, and I am delighted to be here. I am so happy to have students here pursuing what I think is the best discipline, the best career choice, social work. It's my home, and it has been a wonderful home for me for many years, and I'm happy to kind of share my journey with you. I tell students that I'm actually a reluctant researcher. I fell into this as in the latter part of my career. I started my career actually as a pursuing psychology, and I was in a internship in a master's program, and I had my person who was my mentor tell me, George, you are much more of a social worker. You really should pursue that degree. And so I did. I spent the early part of my career working with people with disabilities, adults with intellectual disabilities. And it was that internship in psychology that actually set the tone for me regarding social justice and making the connection. I had always wanted to be a practitioner. I had always wanted to work with people directly. And that internship was actually an internship handing out condoms at gay bars. I was going out, it was in the height of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and my internship was doing community education around sexual health. And that's actually been the thrust of my practice and my research. I primarily work around sexual well-being and sexual health. And I think that is one of the things that I most love about social work, is that it is a discipline, it is a field where you can find your passion and you can kind of hone and focus on the things that really are unique and special to you. Mine happened to be sexual well-being, which is a pretty unique niche, if you will. Justine asked us some questions to address. The first one was the joys of being a researcher. And I think the joy is allowing your passion to become your expertise. And I've spent my entire adult career learning about and becoming an expert in sexual health so that I could work with clients around well-being and education in that area. And that brings me a lot of joy to wake up every day and be able to do what I love. I think one of the best joys of that a researcher can find is when you submit an article to a scholarly journal and you get back what is called an R&R, a revise resubmit, which means they didn't deny it, they didn't reject it, they actually won it. And I think that is probably one of the best joys that I look forward to whenever I submit a journal article, an R&R, a revise and resubmit. And that is something to kind of think about if you're becoming a researcher, is that you're going to have to become comfortable with a lot of rejection. And that's the flip side to the question. What are the challenges of being a researcher? You do get a lot of rejection, and research can be lonely and it can be time consuming, where you're spending a lot of time working in your area, perhaps not around colleagues, but perhaps doing reading and research and things of that nature to prepare a manuscript. And so part of the problem is, one of the challenges is staying connected to your colleagues. So that would be a challenge. The third question I got asked were maybe some tips and tricks, if you will, regarding research. And I think the first thing I would recommend is to work smart, be tenacious. You don't have to always focus on being the smartest, but making sure that you're getting things done. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. And I've had plenty of colleagues who languish because they're always revising, and they never put out anything. And so recognizing that you want to be tenacious, you want to be dedicated to sending something across the finish line. I think another idea about working smarter is collaborating with your colleagues. It doesn't all have to be you. You don't have to be the expert in everything. Find somebody else who is really good in perhaps the methodology that you want to employ in your research, or find somebody who's really good in editing, and build this collegial network so that you can be a good researcher. An easy tip to do is start subscribing to social work journals and subscribing to the alerts that they put out. They all put out alerts when new articles come about. So look at your favorite social work journals and get email alerts, and they'll tell you when new articles are coming out. And you just quickly look at the abstract and see if it's something that you're interested in. Start learning the language of research. The APA, recognizing that there is a language, there is a writing style, and start familiarizing yourself with that. As Robin, as Dr. North talked about, find out who are hosting conferences and attend those research conferences to build your professionalization, to start building your reputation and your sense of a professional identity as a researcher. So going to those conferences. In the US, there's two major conferences, CSWE and SWED. Those are the big social work conferences. So don't be afraid also to look out internationally to where these conferences are being held, and recognizing that is your tribe, that is your community, and start to associate yourself with those people. And I think it's important also to find a mentor. Find somebody that is doing the work that you want to do. Find a researcher that's conducting the type of research, and just approach them and ask them. Tell them that you're interested and that you're willing to help out, and find out who is doing that in your own backyard, but also perhaps out in the community, because it might not be within your own close proximity of people. So you may have to look out Who are the people in my circumstances? Who are the people who are sexual health experts? Who are the big names? Who are the people that I could look to for guidance? Other ideas or other tips, perhaps. I have actual folders on my desktop where when I'm reading those articles or those abstracts, I put them into folders so that I can come back to them. So if there is methodology that I'd like to learn about, like ethnography, I have a folder on ethnography. And so I'll throw articles into that and I can come back and read those if I'm looking to learn more about that. Or I specifically want to look at Australian sex education. I have a folder that is research around that area so that I can come back to it and look for it. It helps me in my writing later. Also, I think it's important to recognize that what you are interested in, what is available to you, makes for good research. So look what is low-hanging fruit, what is immediately available to you, and start thinking about that as potential research and thinking about how you might frame that as a possible research project. And I think the most critical, the most important piece is to identify a critical friend, somebody who will read your writing and give you honest feedback, somebody who's going to edit it and point out mistakes, but also offer suggestions. You don't want that critical friend to be necessarily the person who's going to tell you that it's wonderful. You want that critical research friend, that critical writing friend, to be somebody who's really going to scan through it and help you improve your writing and your research. I guess finally, the final question, what would I tell my younger self? I pondered on this, and I think there's three things I would have told my younger self. Professionally, value yourself. Value the discipline of social work and recognize that it is a great profession. It's a profession that deserves to be recognized, and you deserve to be recognized. You don't have to be Mother Teresa, okay? And recognizing that you deserve to have a paying job, you deserve to have recognition by your peers, whether you're working on a multidisciplinary profession, that you are a valuable contributor to that team. And I think you have to first and foremost believe in that, believe in yourself. I often tell my students, I never ever want to hear someone say, I'm just a social worker. That phrase is forbidden in my class. So value yourself. Clinically, I would have told myself that clients are resilient and I don't need to overhelp clients. I don't need to fix them, that I can believe in their ability to struggle and thrive, and that's okay. And from a research standpoint, if I would have told myself something, is that research is not all about numbers and stats. That's an important aspect of research, but ultimately it is about telling the story of clients. And one of the ways that helped me understand myself as a researcher and help me put that hat on is recognizing that my research allows me to tell a story of the clients. The story is their data, and it allows me to help influence policy and public opinion, and it allows me to have people, to help people have more vibrant, healthy sexual lives. And that is an important aspect of my work. And so research fits very, very nicely in this image of myself, in this image of what I see social work as an educator, a clinician, and a researcher. I see those three aspects as essential to who I am. I'm an educator, I'm a clinician or practitioner, and I'm a researcher. Those three things balance out who I am as a social worker. That's all I have.
Oh, you have, George. That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's very inspirational. We've got a couple of questions related to research and that you know, like Neela saying she's got a research project in her mind, but not sure how she can go about it. What can she do collaboratively? You know, how should she go about it? Should she seek other students or a researcher to go about it? And in a way, I think you...
Yeah, I think it really is important to have this. If you think about, even though you're a researcher and you're a solo practitioner sometimes, is to have this collaborative team. And part of that team is bouncing ideas off of people. And so it is important to gather those people close to you and say, I have these ideas. Can you help me flesh it out? And can you help me? Because sometimes your ideas are really, really on target, but oftentimes what they need is some tweaking. They need to get better, and they only can get better by having someone. And so as a student, I absolutely think you need to approach somebody. If you identify with an area, a professor, an academic, if you identify in a certain practice area, sexual health, then you want to find that professor, you want to find that academic that you can say, I have these ideas, can I start working with you so that I can start to develop this sense of editing and this sense of taking ideas from idea stage to practice, and start to collaborate with them, and recognizing that that takes time to build that skill. And so you're not going to have it overnight. So there's no shame in attaching yourself to a practitioner or to an academic or a mentor, if you will. I myself, I have colleagues in this room that I work with, and I'm bouncing ideas off all the time, because the thing that I do really well is I like to have big ideas. It's actually taking those ideas to something that's manageable that I need help with. And so that's why I have colleagues to help me do that.
That's great. Thanks, George. And I think you also pointed to it with the idea of even the reading in journals. If you identify who those authors are who are writing about your passion area, try and, you know, follow them up that way. Yeah. That's
absolutely
great.
Absolutely. Start to recognize who are the leaders within your identified area. It's child, who's writing about that, and not just in Australia, but internationally. Who is, and you start to get a sense of that, because again, if you're new to that particular field, you might not know who those authors, but if you start kind of looking at the articles and you start looking at who's always publishing, it's like, oh, that name seems to be associated a lot with that topic. And so that might be something you want to start to follow.
Yeah, so Neela's come back with some more questions, but I think George has actually answered that, to follow up the journals, you know, to find who's writing in your passion area. Okay, they're the people that, but also, yeah, to scan through the staff, you know, staff directory, to look at the profiles of the academics that you're in the course of, because that will be a great way. And I think that's a nice segue too, Neela, because Daniel's going to give us the information about what happens at Western. Yeah, that's great. All right. So Daniel, if I share the screen of your presentation.
Yeah, I think that should be good.
There we go. Can everybody see that? Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Justin, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this section. It's exciting for me to be here to share my story and to share a few thoughts on what we can do as becoming social workers. So Justin, if you wouldn't mind, would you just move the next slide for me, please? Thank you. Yeah, so this is briefly my story. I started my Bachelor of Social Work degree way back in 1999. I completed around 2002. And then in doing that, of course, it's an honest program. So I did what we call long essay at the time. It's a dissertation. So I did something on children on the street, or streetism, so to say, which took me into child protection and working with children on the street for some time. And then just after my bachelor's degree, I worked in the education sector as a school social work officer. Very exciting portfolio at the time. And there I had opportunity to work with a lot of children, which also took me to ILO to do some work on child labor and child protection, and then a few activities with UNICEF also on children and child protection generally. And the journey moved on to my Master of Philosophy, Social Work in 2010. And there, I also conducted an independent research on aging and social protection. So a big shift from child protection and child welfare issues now into aging and aging-related issues. A number of things happened to change that trajectory, but that's not the cause of discussion right now. But just after completing that master's program, I taught in the University of Ghana for 4 years, teaching social work and social policy related units until I came into Australia here to complete my PhD in social science in 2017 at the Edith University. There also, I continued with my study on aging and social protection. So I did something on active aging and quality of life. So I can just build a storyline or a trajectory for myself when it comes to research. I wanted to carve a niche in this field. So just after completing that PhD, I worked in the aged care sector or the social care industry for at least 2 years in Perth, another exciting opportunity there in that industry. I was working in the capacity of a quality assurance and research officer, and which of course opened me to several opportunities within the aged care field in Australia. And now I'm here at Westin teaching various social work units and meeting almost all of you here today. The biggest question is what next? What next for me in this storyline? It's more about getting to the top of the social work academic and professional ladder, which is to become a professor one day. So one day I will be a professor, hopefully, as I work towards that in social work. But what's the motivation? What actually drove this trajectory up to this point? Like many others here today, like George spoke and Robin spoke, I didn't really set out to become a social worker, no. My passion initially was to be an economist. So my high school studies and everything I did was in economics. I wanted to become an economist, and I applied to the university to read economics. Unfortunately, the university turned me down, and they rather offered me social work. So one university said, of course, there were two universities. The most prestigious university at the time, University of Ghana, turned me down and gave me social work, but another offered me economics to come and read that. So I was torn between choosing social work at the University of Ghana, where everyone wants to be, or another university to read my passion. But then I came to the University of Ghana to read social work. Now, my turning point was my first lecture, social work lecture, which was on human needs in social work, taught by Professor Siobhan Lair. She was a British social worker who came to Ghana to actually start the social work degree in Ghana. And that lecture changed my life. I realized that no, actually I was pursuing the wrong thing. I think this is where I needed to be. I felt challenged, but at the same time, very comfortable with what I was hearing. And I thought, indeed, this is worth pursuing. So since then, I resolved, that's from 1999, I resolved to get to the top of the social work professional and academic ladder. So the first thing was resolution. I said, I'm going to pursue this, I would do it. And then at the same time, I was open to opportunities within this field, and I took every chance that came my way. So 3 core things that define the moment for me. 1, my resolve to pursue a professional and academic career in social work. And 2, being open to opportunities in that field. So at the time, I remember right after my first degree, I was taking on several voluntary activities with non-governmental organizations, going in, working with faith-based institutions, just practicing on voluntary basis. So I took every opportunity that came my way so I could build skills relevant for effective social work practice. And every chance that opened, I never let it go. I took it. So if there is anything I would advise each and every one of you today, it's about deciding what you want to be and what you want to do. Make a resolution on that. Be open and free-minded and took your chances. All right, thanks. Can we just move again? So that's my story. The question then is, what are the options for you from my story? Or what can you do to also build a research and professional career trajectory in the way that most of us have done up to this point? Now, there are different pathways, but you may end up in the same or similar destinations. The first pathway for those of you in the bachelor's program and then the master's program, of course, we have the bachelor's degree, the honors aspect of it, which takes you into the doctoral program straightforward, where after your first degree, of course, you take an honors program 1 year to develop a project or research, and then that takes you straight into a doctoral degree. That pathway is no longer very viable within Western University setting. It's been discontinued somehow and is being shifted to another pathway, which I'll be talking about shortly. Then we from the bachelor's degree also, having had sufficient research experience on the field, you can go in to read MPhil, or what we call Master of Philosophy, and then that takes you into the PhD degree, which was my pathway. That's the pathway I pursued. After my bachelor's, I had sufficient experience and research experience on the field, so I could read an MPhil degree, and then that took me into a PhD. Now, an emerging pathway, which is a very viable and strong pathway within this university, is from the bachelor's, you can go in for the Master of Research degree, which is a coursework-based research degree. I will talk about that a little bit more. And from there, the best pathway, that takes you to PhD. Then, of course, for those of you in the MSWQ, you could also go through the same MRS or MPhil pathway if you have previous research background, then into the Doctor of Philosophy pathway. Now, increasingly, we also see a number of professional doctorates coming up in social work for those professionals who not really wanted to go so much into the academics of things, but have advanced degree in professional practice. And so from the Bachelor of Social Work, if you have a very strong strong research and work experience, very extensive experience, of course, you could enroll into the Doctor of Social Work program. It happens in a number of universities, but not in Western Sydney. I know Chastad runs the DSW program, which is great. And then for MSWQ, once you also have a strong work background and research experience, you can also enroll into the Doctor of Social Work program. So these are the options available to you. But I would spend a little bit more time to talk about option 3 and 4, because those are very good options within our university here. And that takes us to the next slide, please. And the last slide, of course. All right. Now, let me introduce you to the Master of Research program, and specifically Master of Research program in Social Sciences, which is the one I am coordinating. Now, this is a very interesting program that sets the context for your research career It's an internationally recognized research degree, and prepares you to, one, start thinking about your PhD, and two, if you intend to go into professional work, but just become a professional researcher in industry, that's also sufficient to give you that skill to do that. So two things that this degree does for you. One, it prepares you for a PhD, and it's a sure bet to enter into a PhD at Western Sydney now. Two, it also prepares you for the field of research, assuming that you don't want a PhD, you just want to become a good researcher. You could do that. Now, it's a 2-year full-time program and 4 years part-time if you want to do that. The first year is usually a coursework-based unit where you pick up a few elective courses in your discipline. If you are a social work, few elective courses in that discipline. And then there are methodological trainings and then some theory trainings within this field for 1 year. That takes you to get yourself ready for your thesis year. That's the second year. And you spend time to conduct an independent research under the supervision of your nominated supervisors for that 1 year extended period. A beautiful thing about this program is that for those of you who are domestic students, there are funded places available under the program for you, funded under the higher degree program. But for international students, of course, like many other master's program, you would have to pay for this or seek for scholarships. Now, entry requirements, as I said in the previous slide, it's a bachelor's degree or master's degree. Please, just 1 second, one minute, please.
While Daniel's doing that, I can actually say we've got before us, like I did the doctorate of social work after many years of practice, just as an example. So we've got, each of us have gone a different trajectory. So I really want to encourage you to think about those. Sorry, Daniel, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for starting in, Justin. Thank you so much. Yeah. So I was on the entry requirements that you need a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So in this case, you are already there in the first instance in a relevant discipline in social science to be able to enroll. And then in doing so, we look out for your, what we call the admission average mark of 65 and above in your most recent qualification. And how do we determine that? Of course, we calculate the total marks that have been awarded to you, divided that by the number of units you've taken to get the average admission mark. Now, if your most recent degree is more than 5 years, then we would have to look at your professional experience in the field before that degree is offered to you. If you need more information on the admission process and any other thing relating to this program, here is a link to that. For enrollment, to get in touch with potential supervisors and get yourself started on the course, you can just email me and I would have a deeper interaction with you and prepare you for that. I would want to encourage you that if you are looking forward to an advanced degree, a research degree in social work, in social science, this pathway is a very solid pathway because it gives you that competitive advantage to be able to complete your research on time. All right, I think that's all for me. Thanks very much for listening.
Thanks very much, Daniel. We've got a couple of questions. One is, is anybody aware of scholarship opportunities for people to be able to go on any of these journeys of further study?
Yeah, now, I said earlier on that for domestic students, there are funded places for domestic students. For international students, the scholarships are usually the mainstream scholarship available to postgraduate students. I know of Australia Awards, and it's a bit harder for master's students, unlike PhD students, to get a scholarship. But increasingly, Australia Awards is providing a number of scholarships to international students to read different master's degree programs, and that could be an option. Other than that, the university website has a number of options available to a student that I can make available to you if you contact me. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks very much. Okay, so just had a request to post the, oops, not managing all the little management things well. Let's see if that, yep. So request to post the contact for further information. I suppose the important part is to say that sometimes it just can feel very confusing, but right back to what Robin was saying and George was saying and Daniel, that area of passion, but also the resolve to follow through. And so if you can, don't force yourself into research if that's not your immediate desire. Get your confidence with practice and start to have those questions that arise from more and more practice experience about how you can truly, as George described, have that nexus between practice, research and policy change. So that's a really fruitful, don't feel obliged to take these steps, but know that there are possibilities. And Daniel's pointed out the basis of moving on to a master's by research. Now, anybody's eligible to be considered for that, aren't they, Daniel? Like in terms of a bachelor, somebody who's graduated with a bachelor's of social work, they're eligible to go into the master's research based on your grades, the grades that you mentioned, and the experience that they might have in practice. Is that correct? Yeah. But also, I often get people questioning about master's qualifying versus master's research. And importantly, the master's research is this focus on capability around research skills. Yeah. And neither the Bachelor of Social Work nor the Bachelor of Social Sciences or the master's qualifying in social work have the opportunity to concentrate so fully on building your research skills. Yeah. So that's why it's worth considering as either at that equivalent level of master's qualifying or Bachelor of Social Work. The Masters of Research is a really great stepping stone. Consolidating. So what other questions are there? What if our previous master's degree was done overseas? Would WSU recognise a previous master's degree as a research degree or not?
Yes, I came here with a previous master's degree from a different university, international, that's from Ghana. So yes, that degree will be recognized so long as it meets the admission requirements of the university. And there's a way of calculating the admission average mark, even from an international degree. So that's a possibility. Increasingly, we are seeing a number of students being admitted with international master's degrees here.
And would you like, in addition to looking at further information, that link that we've supplied there, are you happy for people to contact you directly, Daniel?
Yes, because I'm the unit coordinator for the Master of Research program at the School of Social Science. Every admission inquiry comes to me, so you can contact me for anything you want to know, and I'll provide you with the information.
I'll just put up your email.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's okay.
Great. And I'm conscious that time is getting away from us, but George also is very happy for people to contact. Is that correct, George? If people have
Absolutely. I'd be happy to talk with people. And I just wanted to maybe add a little piece to something that's been said before. I too had a career that was much more like bumper cars and going to the edges and bouncing versus a straight line and smooth. And so it's okay for you to explore this area, to explore this area. I didn't go back for my PhD until many years working in the field of disabilities, and I had my master's and I was a practitioner. It wasn't until many years later that I went back for my PhD to do research. So that's something to think about. And also back to that idea of being resolute. Resolute is more than just wishing for something. It's actually putting into practice. When I wanted to be a clinician, I identified the clinician that I wanted to have supervision with, and I arranged in my schedule and paid for out of my pocket to get supervision with this person weekly. And I did that for 2 years to elevate my clinical skills because it was something that I wanted to do. Likewise with research, I identified the people that I wanted to work with, and I pursued that relationship and really tried to become someone that was of value to their work. How could I work with them and add value to their work? That way I learned from them.
Yeah, there's a question here. Someone, I think that's Dominique, is asking the difference between the Doctor of Social Work and then the PhD. I think the core difference is that the PSW is largely a professional doctorate. Normally it's more an issue of the entry requirements into that degree. Most professionals who have achieved so much in their field would want a higher degree in that field so they can opt in for DSW, or that's a professional doctorate degree. But the MPhil, it's the stronger academic aspect of things, and the requirement, the entry requirement into the MPhil are quite different. Sorry, I say MPhil, PhD are quite different from the DSW. For PhD, strictly strong research background right from the beginning, coupled with some experience. Unlike the DSW, you can come in through a professional trajectory into that program.
Yep. And Robin, did you want to add anything in terms of your trajectory or?
Thanks, Justine. Just reflecting on all the speakers today, as Justine highlighted, we all came through different routes. We were all of different ages. And so I guess the main thing I want to say is you're never too old to learn. I thought going to uni as an older student, oh my goodness, I'm going to be the oldest person in the classroom. I'm going to be so embarrassed. Lots of people come to social work and then go on to research, as did George and I at an older age. You're never too old to learn, and you're never too young to learn. The great thing about Western is we have a whole range of ages of students doing not only bachelor study or social work studies, but research studies, people that have come straight from school and have gone right through. Although if you have got that practice experience, it's going to really assist you in what we talk about in social work, linking theory to practice. And that's what I was talking about earlier, that applied nature of our research, where we do want to make a change, or we aim to strive for change to make things more socially just for people. So you're never too old. And I think the world as it currently is, we need more social workers and people doing research around social work issues.
Well, that's heaps. That's a lovely way to wrap it up. Final comment, if any panel member wanted to add anything else? No? All covered? I think you've really shared the diverse range of passion that's come together into our lucky department, honestly. I'm so pleased to have you guys as colleagues. And I also really value the fact that people have contributed so thoughtfully on the chat line as well. So I hope we've inspired you to keep that little idea of further study and research on the side, and maybe bring it top of mind when it feels right for you. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Daniel Doe, Dr. Daniel Doe, Dr. George Turner, and Dr. Robin North. And thanks, Rabina Shretha, for your support and monitoring everything. And also I want to thank the Career Hub the staff have been amazing in trying to pull all these sessions together. So tomorrow at 11, we've got a Department of Communities and Justice presentation by Stuart Malka, and we'd love to see you there. And also late advice on Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. The AASW, the Australian Association of Social Workers, are going to come online for our wrap-up session. So that wasn't previously advertised. So thank you, everyone, and thanks for your time. All the best.